You know, one of my most favorite books that I've ever written was Bows and Arrows, because it's kind of the story of my life and the story of many, many young people that I've been able to mentor and help through the years. You know, for me, the concept of this book is that the bow is the older generation and the arrow is the younger generation. And the value of the bow is in its flexibility to shoot the arrow, and the value of the arrow is in its ability to be guided by the bow. So it's the synergy of two generations. But one of the stories that I love to tell is how I got called to preach. And it's a very unique story. A lot of times when someone says, "How did you know you were called to ministry?" Well, some people say it was a feeling, or I just knew. Well, mine was quite dramatic. And I guess that's what God knew I had to have in order to go into the ministry. And I actually tell that story in chapter 5 of Bows and Arrows. But here's the story. The long story short is that there was this older couple that would always invite me to their house. And I was 16 years old. They would invite me to their house. They lived way up in the mountains on a dirt road. And their name was Jan and Hulda Allison. And I would go to their house to chop their wood, and I would drive them in their old car to get their medications. I would drive them into Newport, Tennessee, is where we lived in Cosby, Tennessee. And it was a long ways, so I drove them down those old mountain roads because they could no longer drive. They were in their 80s. And so every time I would take them something or go get something for them or chop their wood, they would always want to pay me. Now, they had no money, so they really couldn't pay me in checks or dollars or bills or any of the dollar bills or anything like that. So they ended up paying me in prayer. Now, I wish I could illustrate this better, but he would sit on one side in a rocking chair and she would sit on the other side in a rocking chair. And I literally had to get on my knees in front of them, and they would rock me back and forth just like this the whole time. Now, I was 16 years old, and honestly, it was a back-breaking experience. But I loved them so much that, you know, they wanted to do it, and I just let them do it. The thing that always surprised me about their prayers is they didn't really pray. They said the same thing over and over and over. "God, make a preacher out of him." That's what they would say. "God, make a preacher out of them." I never really understood why they prayed that prayer. Inside, I wouldn't say it out loud in front of them, but inside I would say, "No, God, I don't want to be a preacher. I'm 16 years old. I don't want to be a preacher." Well, when I was 17 years old, so this has been going on for over a year, and when I was 17 years old, I got a call from my parents that Brother Allison was having a heart attack, and they knew how much I loved this older couple. And my mom and dad, there was no emergency systems out there. There was no ambulance. It would have taken forever. So my dad jumps in the church van and is going to take Brother and Sister Allison to the hospital in Newport, Tennessee. I jumped in the van with them just to help him out. So mom and dad are in the front of the van. I'm in the middle. Brother and Sister Allison are on in the back seat, the seat behind me. On the way to Newport, there was a 18-year-old young man in a dump truck coming down the side of a mountain and did not know how to use the air brakes properly, and he hit us in the side. All I remember is the van rolling like a washing machine through the air. When we came down on the road, another car coming up over a hill hit us, who didn't see the accident happen, hit us a second time. I don't remember anything other than this. I was in a dark place. That kind of worries me because I've always heard when you die, you'll see a light. But I was in a dark place, and I just heard a voice. And the voice simply said one thing: "If you will preach, you can live." And I remember thinking to myself in this place, what kind of a choice is that? You know I don't want to preach. What kind of a choice? I'm 17 years old. That's not on my radar. I don't want to preach. But I said, what kind of a choice is that? And the voice that I'm hearing says, "It's the only choice you have." And then I said, kind of like with my hands up in the air, "All right then, I will preach. I don't know how. I don't think I'll be any good at it, but I will preach." And so I accepted my call to preach. Well, after that experience, I remember coming to as if I'd been knocked out. The EMTs had told my parents that I didn't actually survive the accident. They had taken my pulse and they found no pulse. They thought I had died, and they had already told my parents that I had died and not survived the accident. This is the second time in my life my mom had been told I died. When I was born, I was called a blue baby. The cord was wrapped around my neck. I choked, and they worked with me for 20 minutes trying to get me to breathe, and I didn't breathe. And so they laid me in a little silver tray up on the side of there in the hospital, Laughlin Memorial Hospital in Greenville, Tennessee. They laid me up in a little tray, told my parents that their little boy did not survive it. And so my mom said that they were working with her. They had already told them that the little baby didn't make it. And she said all of a sudden I screamed. So I'd been born for 30 minutes at this time, and I just came alive, and there was no explanation. So this is the second time my mom's been told that I didn't make it, and here I am. What I remember, though, is just taking a big, deep breath. Now, Brother Allison had passed away in the accident, and Sister Allison. Both of them were killed upon impact of that, and I was laying underneath them, and I was covered with blood all over, but it wasn't my own blood. It was actually their blood that was covered me from head to toe. And I often wondered why God chose me to preach when I didn't really want to. I wasn't even a good candidate. I was just available. But here's what I believe. I believe those old bows, Brother and Sister Allison said, if I can shoot one more arrow, my ministry can continue. And I was convenient. That's all I can tell you. I don't know that I was special. I don't know that I was smarter than anyone else. I think that old couple, Brother and Sister Allison, said, we got one more shot to continue our ministry. We have to raise up a minister in our place or our ministry's over. And those bows were able to shoot one more arrow as they died. They left this earth, but not without shooting an arrow, and that arrow was me. And so now here I am preaching around the world. I've been in the ministry for 40 years, and it's been the greatest journey of my life. The very thing I didn't want to do turned out to be the greatest blessing I have ever had in my life. And I thank God for that older couple that took the time to pray for me, to speak into me, and to prophesy my ministry when I couldn't even see it myself. I don't know if they saw something in me I couldn't see, or I was the only person willing to chop their wood and let them pray for them. I don't really know. I'll understand it in heaven one day. But one thing I'm certain of is that I am an extension of their ministry. I'm a legacy, not only to them, but to all of those bows who came before me that shot me out as an arrow. And now I'm a bow, and I live to shoot more arrows out into this world so that the gospel will continue. Well, that's my story. Maybe your call to ministry is not as dramatic as mine, but I hope that my story will be a blessing to you and you can add it to your story. God bless you.